Hello and welcome to the dungeon. I'm your host Rob. In today's video we're going to be taking a look at the Fathomless Warlock. And I quite like the Fathomless Warlock. I know last week I said I felt like the Genie is better, and I kind of think it is. But part of the reason is because the Genie works well in pretty much any campaign, I think. And the fact that you've got, your four different types of Gen to choose from gives you a little more flexibility for what spell list you might want to have. I think the Fathomless is a little more constrained by the fact that a bunch of their abilities require you to be in water, right? It's like getting underwater breathing, getting a swim speed, getting like underwater telepathy and stuff. And I think that without that kind of stuff, it's still a very, very viable subclass. It's still really good. The Tentacle especially is quite nice. We'll talk about that in a moment. But I do think that it's probably not going to be as strong. However, in the right campaign, I think it's going to be amazing. So I do think that this is one where I might want to ask my dungeon master in advance and find out what kind of game or what setting we might be running in. And if we're doing something like Out of the Abyss, I'm probably not going to lean as much towards this one. But if we're doing, say, Ghost of Saltmarsh, suddenly we might have a winner. And I do like the concept of this like warlock who's made this pact with some sort of like deep like krakens or ancient like sea god type beings, right? Maybe not gods, but you know what I mean. That might be more clerical range. But for anybody who's read the preview chapter for book 6 for Game of Thrones, I think Euron Greyjoy looks to be a prime example of like a scary, horrific, fathomless warlock, right? He's managed to capture all these priests of these other gods. By the end of the chapter, they show him like he's like chaining them all to the front of his armada while they're like sailing, and so he's got all these priests from all these different gods chained to the front of the ships, and it looks like he's going to sort of do some giant sacrifice and try to like raise, I don't know, a Kraken or Cthulhu, or who knows what he's trying to do. Either way, though, he thinks all the gods are like dead and gone, except for whatever the thing is that he's worshipping. And I'm like, man, this guy's like actually scary. Unlike, the version we got on the TV show where he just spent all his time thinking like, I'm gonna have sex with the queen, yeah! Just the worst. I don't know where they got the TV version of the character from compared to the like warlock pirate guy that we got in the books. The one in the books is actually legitimately scary. I don't know what they were doing. Anyways, that's just another tangent here. I wanted to mention that Euron Greyjoy, possibly one of the we'll never get to see it actually. Who am I kidding? Martin is never going to finish the books. He's going to die before that ever happens because it's taking him 20 years per book at this point, and the guy's like already freaking ancient. So, all we are ever going to have is that chapter of Winds of Winter that he's released with Euron Greyjoy in it. Anyways, moving on to the Fathomless Warlock and putting aside my bitterness of this series never being finished. So first of all, we have the expanded spell list, and I think there's some pretty good choices on here. It's a pretty decent list overall. However, be aware you're not a cleric. You're not just getting all these spells added to you for free. These spells are just getting added to the list of spells you could choose if you choose to use one of your spells known on that spell. So bear that in mind. Level 1, we get Create or Destroy Water and Thunder Wave. Create or Destroy Water, if I'm in a desert campaign, that might be nice as well. Thunder Wave is actually pretty decent though. Warlocks do not have a lot of like good AoE attacks. Especially at level 1, we have like Arms of Hadar, which is pretty underwhelming, and it's like surrounds us as like a point blank area effect damage spell, and it has friendly fire, so it can be very difficult to use. It does have a knockdown effect. It's not, not a completely lost cause, but I think Thunder Wave is just much better, to be honest. Now, granted, you're a warlock, so unless you multi-class with other casters, all your spell slots are just going to automatically scale up, and Thunder Wave is probably what I'm going to ditch after a while. But, you know, at low levels, it's a really nice choice. Level 2, we get Gust of Wind. Yeah. We get Silence, though. Very nice choice there. Level 3, we get Lightning Bolt and Sleet Storm. I don't mind Lightning Bolt. You know, if I'm looking for a third level blast spell, though, Fireball is usually the clear winner. And it's mostly because Fireball is just so much easier to aim. It's way easier to hit a lot of guys with a big giant ball of exploding fire than it is with a fairly narrow line lightning bolt attack, right? But that said, lightning bolt's not the worst thing ever. As I mentioned, I'm usually not a fan of direct damage spells that much, but you know, one thing about Warlocks is we have single target damage spells pretty much on lock just with Eldritch Blast. You take a few of your invocations, like say maybe an Agonizing Blast or a Repelling Blast, maybe even a Lance of Lethargy. We're about to mention that one in a moment as well. And, you know, single target damage is pretty much good to go, right? You don't need anything else. You don't really need like Scorching Ray and other stuff. You can even use Hex to improve that damage even more, right? So I think you're pretty good there. But it is nice to maybe have 1 or 2 AoE attacks. So, you know, also bear that in mind. On the other hand, though, I think Sleet Storm is a great spell, mostly for all the like, control elements that it has. It can be really nice to like divide groups of enemies and stuff as well if you're clever with placement. It's a pretty good spell, I think. Level 4, we get Control Water. Circumstantial, but can be okay sometimes. We also get Summon Elemental Water Only from Natasha's version of it. Not bad. I like summonings, so, you know, it could be worse. Level 5, though, we get Bigby's Hand, which appears as a tentacle, and this is excellent. I think Bigby's Hand is one of the better level 5 spells on the Wizard spell list, so getting that is very nice. And we get Cone of Cold. I prefer Cone of Cold over Lightning Bolt, so I will say that. Again, cone spells can be rather difficult to aim sometimes, and that does kind of limit its effectiveness compared to, say, a fireball. But on the plus side, when you do manage to like get that situation where you get that perfect cone in, you just destroy a ton of stuff. So, you know, that is nice. Moving on to the actual abilities. Level 1, we get Tentacle of the Deeps. You can magically summon a spectral tentacle that strikes your foes. As a bonus action, you create a 10-foot long tentacle at a point you can see within 60 feet of you. The tentacle lasts for 1 minute, or until you use this feature to create another tentacle. When you create the tentacle, you can make a spell melee attack against one creature within 10 feet of it. On a hit, the target takes 1d8 cold damage, and its speed is reduced by 10 feet until the start of your next turn. When you reach 10th level in this class, the damage increases to 2d8. As a bonus action on your turn, you can move the tentacle up to 30 feet and repeat the attack. And you can summon a number of times equal to the proficiency bonus, and you regain all those on a short rest. Or, sorry, a long rest. Long rest. Sorry, I cannot read tonight. Anyways, I've seen a lot of people compare this to Spiritual Weapon, and with pretty good reason, honestly, because it's a pretty good comparison. There are some weaknesses compared to Spiritual Weapon, but there's also some really nice strengths. And overall, I think it's probably better, to be honest. And I say that as somebody who likes Spiritual Weapon and used it quite a bit when I played Cleric. So one nice thing is you get it at level 1, and another is that you're not using a spell slot, which is really nice because you're playing a Warlock, and spell slots are kind of at a premium. You're also not having to concentrate on it, so this means you could be concentrating on something else, which, again, very, very nice. The damage isn't as good because you're not getting like your ability modifier damage added as well, but I don't really like the damage on it that much anyways. I like more the fact that I've got the controlling effect, and don't get me wrong, get a bit of bonus damage in there isn't bad. I mean, honestly, if you just were looking to like maximize your damage, Hex is probably still going to be a better choice combined with whatever else you're using, like, you know, but I like the slowing effect quite a bit, especially, like I mentioned earlier, if you add in some of your invocations for, say, Eldritch Blast. You could be doing, you know, like Repelling Blast where you push the target back. combined with Lance of Lethargy, and now it's reduced movement speed by 10 feet, plus another 10 feet from the tentacle. So you push them 10 feet back, and their movement's reduced by 20 feet, and they can probably barely only get those 10 feet of movement back again. You could just permanently be pushing this guy back while he keeps trying to move towards you, which would be pretty funny, actually. But overall, I think that, between Grasp of Adar and Repelling Blast, Lance of Lethargy, and then maybe the tentacle attacks, you could have a lot of battlefield control just with your Eldritch Blast spell, which you're probably going to take anyways. So I think that there's actually some nice potential here. Also comparing it to Spiritual Weapon, one of the other disadvantages Spiritual Weapon has, and I speak from personal experience, is that sometimes you have situations where you kill the target you are working on, and then there's nothing close by. And Spiritual Weapon has only 20 feet of movement. That's not great. It has a 5-foot range, which, is pretty typical. But this has 30 feet of movement with a 10-foot reach, which ends up being a lot better. And I think that would help to alleviate some of those situations where you kill your first target, you try to move the tentacle or spiritual weapon, depending on what you're using, to the next target, and where the spiritual weapon sometimes can't get to another target, this at least a lot more likely can, right? Obviously, if it's, further than 40 feet away, then it's not going to have the movement plus the reach to attack it. But just saying, your chances are a lot better. So I think that this is pretty decent there. We also get, at level 1, Gift of the Sea. You gain a swimming speed of 40 feet, and you can breathe underwater, which means you're probably faster at swimming than you are at walking. At level 6, you get Oceanic Soul. You're now even more at home in the depths. You gain resistance to cold damage. I like that. In addition, when you are fully submerged, any creature that is also fully submerged can understand your speech, and you can understand theirs. Again, people have compared this to Aquaman, which makes sense. You can breathe and swim underwater, and now you can telepathically communicate with fish. And, interesting. But I want to point out that it's actually not limited to just like water-born or water-native creatures. It just says anything that's fully submerged, and you have to be fully submerged as well. So you could communicate with your allies if you're swimming underwater for some reason. Maybe they'll have water breathing on them, and you're just telepathically communicating with them. I could even see weird situations where maybe you manage to use your high charisma to perform a crazy deception and or persuasion roll and convince somebody to come underwater with you in the lake so that you can have a private conversation. That's what that charisma is for. Might as well use it for crazy stuff like this. Either way, I don't think it's a great ability, but there might be times when it comes up. Level 6, we also get Guardian Coil. Your Tentacle of the Deeps can defend you and others, interposing itself between them and harm. When you or a creature you can see takes damage while within 10 feet of the tentacle, you can use your reaction to choose one of those creatures and reduce the damage to that creature by 1d8. When you reach 10th level in this class, the damage is reduced by 2d8 instead. I don't think this ability is great. It's not a lot of damage, but I do think it's an ability that you'll get to use a lot. And, I'd rather have something I'm going to use a lot that's maybe of limited usefulness over something that I'm never going to use, right? Even if it's good. So, I don't think this is a bad ability by any means. I even think that if you're using it to lower the damage of somebody concentrating on a spell, maybe yourself, maybe the party's wizard or cleric or somebody else, but they're maintaining concentration on something big that you want them to keep, lowering the damage they take could help them make that concentration save. So this ability is not worthless by any means. It is using your reaction, but I don't think it's bad. Like I said, if you have that tentacle out and you're smacking stuff with it, there are going to be times when you're just like, yeah, I might as well use my reaction to lower the damage there. It's not limited to a number of times. It's not equal to your charisma mod or your proficiency bonus or anything like that. Just use your reaction, but you can do it once per pass, right? And I don't think that's terrible by any means. Anyways, level 10. This one is probably your best ability, although the tentacle itself is pretty good as well. But this ability is quite good. It's called Grasping Tentacles. You learn the spell Evard's Black Tentacles, which I already like. I think that's a great spell. It counts as a Warlock spell for you, but doesn't count against the number of spells you know. Even better. You also can cast it once without using a spell slot, and you regain the ability to do so when you finish a long rest. So even better, I'm getting it for free. It doesn't count against my spells knowing. I can cast it with the spell slot, but I can also cast it once per long rest without using a spell slot. So even better. Whenever you cast this spell, your patron's magic bolsters you, granting you a number of temporary hit points equal to your Warlock level. So now I'm getting temporary hit points for casting what's already a great spell. Awesome. Moreover, damage can't break your concentration on this spell. So you're not going to worry about concentration saving throws. However, I will point out it says damage, so I'm assuming that if you're like rendered unconscious or stunned or anything like that would normally just automatically end your concentration, I'm guessing it'll still end because of those effects. It only says damage. But even still, very, very nice ability. Finally, at level 14, we get Fathomless Plunge. You can magically open temporary conduits to watery destinations. As an action, you can teleport yourself and up to 5 other willing creatures that you can see within 30 feet of you. Amid a whirl of tentacles, you all vanish and then reappear up to 1 mile away in a body of water you've seen, pond size or larger, or within 30 feet of it, each of you appearing in a non-occupied space within 30 feet of the others. Once you use this feature, you can't use it again until you finish a short or long rest. I think this thing has potential as like a evacuation, emergency, get out of jail type of ability. But the fact that you have to have seen the water, the fact that the water has to be pond size or larger, these things start to be like really limiting factors. Also, like there's a really big river count. I don't know, what do they mean by pond size or larger? Yeah, we all know what a pond is, but what if you have a giant river? Is that pond size? If you go by volume, it's going to be way bigger than the pond. But are we going by depth? Are we going by width across? I don't really know. As a DM, I would probably allow large rivers. If it's a little creek or a stream, probably not, because that doesn't really seem to be the intention of what the spell is supposed to do. And I get it, they don't want you using your create or destroy water spell and then having a little puddle of water and then teleporting back or towards it or whatever, right? I understand that might leave things open for abuse. Any of your party members could just pour water on the ground and then you could teleport you all there or something. But this does seem to be a very limited feature, right? And again, it's one that, maybe you're outdoors, maybe you're near the ocean all the time because you're along the coast or something like that. This is an ability that you could be using constantly. On the other hand, this is an ability that you could go all the way to level 20, and even if you would have had this ability at level 1, might have never used it. So I do think that the effectiveness of this ability might kind of fluctuate and could really depend on the campaign and the setting. So anyways, those are all the abilities covered by that subclass. Overall, like I said, I do think that there is some potential for some really cool roleplay here. I think the class itself has some neat abilities. I really like the idea of this just giant water tentacle thing, smacking stuff and slowing its movement speed. I think there's some neat potential there as a battlefield type controller playstyle, I do kind of worry though that a lot of the abilities of this class are things like breathing and swimming underwater, telepathically communicating underwater, teleporting to water, and I don't know how often that's going to happen in your campaign. So I would really suggest talking to your dungeon master, finding out anything he's willing to give you about the campaign, right? Like I said, if you're going to be playing, maybe you're adventuring on the Sword Coast and you're just going to be doing a lot of stuff along the coast, this class could be, or subclass could be really, really good. On the other hand, you might not be anywhere near that. You could be in the Underdark the whole time. And yeah, there are some underground lakes and rivers and stuff, but overall, it's probably going to be a lot more limiting for what you can kind of do. So, I don't know, those are my thoughts on it. I don't think it's by any means a bad subclass. I just think that, especially as a warlock, we have some really strong subclass choices. And, you know, especially having just covered the Genie last week, which has things like Wish on the spell list. And just the Genie abilities in general. Like the spell lists are very flexible depending on what type of Jin you go with. You can really customize your spell list a lot. So, I mean, I think that one has a lot more flexibility. But I do think that in the right type of campaign, this one's going to be very, very strong, maybe even stronger. Because your campaign might not even get to 17. You might never get Wish. But you're going to get your Tentacle right at level 1, right? So bear that in mind. You do have some really good abilities at really early levels with this subclass. And yeah, you know, maybe you never use your swim speed. But, you know, that's not the worst thing ever either. I kind of feel like if I have good abilities, then other abilities that are just kind of like fluff, you know, they don't hurt me, right? Not every subclass has just great abilities from top to bottom on every single level range, right? But this one usually has some pretty good options at least. So, you know, if you have your Tentacle and you can breathe underwater, it's like, yeah, I'm going to for sure use a Tentacle, and I might breathe underwater. Anyways, those are my thoughts. I'm starting to ramble. Anybody who's interested in Euron Greyjoy, find some good YouTube videos talking about him, and you'll see what I mean when I talk about like dark, evil, warlock, pirate type guy, you know, because the book version is just nothing at all like what we got on the show. I cannot stress how disappointing. I mean, obviously the final couple seasons were just disappointing in general for anybody who watched it, but man, what they did with Euron Greyjoy was just an absolute travesty. So anyways, those are my thoughts. Feel free to like, subscribe, ring the bell for notifications, all the YouTube stuff usually, of course. And most importantly, leave me your comments in the comment section. I'd love to hear people's experiences playing this subclass. I haven't actually had a chance to play it myself. No one on my table's played it. But we do have a new campaign starting up right away. So who knows, maybe somebody will. I am going to be playing a Warlock, but I think I'm going to go with the Barbarian Warlock multi-class I covered in a previous video once. I never got a chance to play that, and I was just looking through some of my multi-class videos, and I was like, man, I'd really like to try that one out. So my friend Jaden is going to be running Descent to Avernus, and I was like, why not? Let's give it a shot. You know, I've played Warlock Paladin, I've played Sorcerer Paladin, I've played Warlock Sorcerer, but I haven't tried Barbarian Warlock yet. So this will give me a chance to play that. I might even do a future video just kind of like reviewing how I built the character and how it worked, right? So we have the one theoretical video where I talk about, you know, this sounds like good. Let's try this maybe. And then I'm going to have the actual played experience. So we'll have the idea versus the reality, and hopefully the reality meets our expectations or maybe even exceeds it. Who knows? I think it'll be decent, but, you know, I'll have more in the future on that, I guess. Anyways, that's enough of me rambling now. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.